All right, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. It's Good Afternoon, Ghana, and we continue analyzing issues of the nation. This afternoon, what we have on the table is our ministers that are currently before the vetting committee in Parliament being vetted or being asked questions as to what they are coming to the table with. We've had some pass through, and the committee, I'm sure, will finish its work soon. But prior to these this vetting activities by the MPs, political party NDC released a statement that they were not in support of the approval of any additional members of parliament. The minority also released a statement. Well, there's been some issues that's been raised with the two statements, saying that the two statements don't agree, even though they come from the same party. Is that a fact? But going forward, is the position of either the NDC or the minority in parliament going to affect the outcome of the vetting that's currently ongoing? We're here to discuss these issues with some members of the political, gathering that will be with us here on the platform. So Murtala Mohammed, a member of parliament, will join us. In fact, he's already with us. And we also have Palgrave Boache Dankwa, who will also join us. He's also speaking for government, and also one of the executives of the NDC, Elikem Kotoko, will also join us as the deputy national organizer as well. But in good time, I will introduce them. For now, let me take a breather. When I come back, we'll set the ball rolling.
When you look at what is happening in the country right now, the public expects this engagement to be very serious. So I will plead with you once again for my questions. I am not here to joke. We can joke when we get to the what parliament.
Welcome back to the program. It's Good Afternoon, Ghana. Let me introduce Murtala Mohammed, Honorable Member of Parliament for the Tamale Central constituency. You're welcome. Good afternoon to you. And thank you for joining us. Your mic is off, I'm told. Okay. All right. So the next person with us in the studio already is Palgrave Boache Dankwa. He's government spokesperson on governance and security. He's also joined us. I'm expecting Elikem Kotoko to join us as the deputy national organizer for the party. And later, Akwesi Kunedu, MP for Menchia North, will also join us via Zoom for this conversation. So, Palgrave, you're welcome. Good afternoon to you. How are you managing Boko?
Well,
your mic is off.
My mic is on.
Oh, it's on. Okay. All right, then speak up a bit. All right.
So a very good afternoon to you and to your viewers. Boku is a very unique and distinct case, but clearly you are aware that government has presence in Boku. We apologize really to people that have had to go through a lot of difficulties. You recall that there was an arrest purported to be an arrest, but the youth held against it. The very respected king. And government is really ensuring that Boku as a border town is safe and secure because of the influx of the vulnerable people from Burkina Faso, particularly women and children who are coming in. And we have deployed a sizable number of the Ghana Armed Forces to be within the community to ensure that peace prevails.
All right, let me just, let you know that I actually will sit in for Paul Adumoche tomorrow, God willing, on Good Evening Ghana. And I think we'll get into that area. We have done it before on Good Evening Ghana, and we had very good feedback. So with the development, we intend to go back there. So people of Boko, I know most of you sent messages, letters. Some were unhappy, some were happy that we tabled the topic at least. So we haven't forgotten about you. We will do it again tomorrow. So you join us on the platform. But let's deal with the matter on the table this afternoon that has to do, of course, with members of parliament who are currently grilling the new ministers that have been nominated by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for replacement of ministers that have left the office or that have resigned. So the NDC sent us a letter. The statement says that a statement on vetting and approval of new ministerial nominee or nominees. The NDC has long expressed concern over the very large size of the current government and shares the views of most Ghanaians, including civil society, that it must be reduced, bearing in mind that the current massive economic mess the country has been plunged into by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. Now, despite the numerous appeals, President Akufo-Addo has quite characteristically remained adamant to and tone deaf. It says that the leadership of the NDC has, against this background, directed the minority caucus in parliament not to approve any of the new ministerial nominees and to further push for the reduction in the size of government with a view to reduce the needless drain on scarce public resources. Now, in this moment of haircut, the most important thing the government can do is to a governmental haircut. Is to do a governmental haircut, and our directive to the minority in parliament will be strongly aligned. Will be in strongly aligned with the genuine sentiments of most Ghanaians. Enough is enough. It's signed by Fifi Kwete, the General Secretary of the NDC. Let's go to the minority statement. It says that 6 years of economic mismanagement of the Nana Addo Bawumia NPP government has rendered life unbearable, in fact, almost impossible for millions of Ghanaians who struggle daily to make ends meet. Many people struggle to afford even one meal a day. The situation in respect of feeding in senior high schools across the country is even more disturbing. We are burdened with unsustainable debt, now currently standing at over 600 billion Ghana cedis, representing about 103% of our GDP. This is the highest level of the indebtedness in the Fourth Republic. Inflation is galloping and at hyper levels, and we are confronted with a daily price increase beyond reach of majority of our people. Interest rates have skyrocketed, and our currency has been in a free fall, counting among the worst performing in the world. Since the beginning of this year alone, it has fallen about 20%. Now, it says that the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government has, amid this economic disaster, essentially withheld interest in the principal payments to millions of bondholders under the crude debt restructuring program. Now, 17 banks, over 80% insurance companies may be on the verge of collapse because of this ill-conceived debt restructuring program. And let us be very clear that all the suffering and pains is because of the gross economic mismanagement of the President Akufo-Addo Bawumia and Ken Ofori-Atta Atta, in whose hands we entrusted the public purse. Now, in the midst of our economic woes and crisis of this magnitude, conventional wisdom teaches us that a responsible government must make basic steps in and cut its coats according to its size. So its behavior must reflect the terrible times. So, let me move to this side. It says that indeed, instead of a serious, impactful cuts in government expenditure, more expense continues to be added to the burden of the taxpayer. And it is unconscionable to note that government has added a whopping 82 billion Ghana cedis to the expenditure to 2023 compared to 2022. And okay, I'm just trying to get to the point where its decision will be made. So it says that finally we reiterate our call for the dismissal of the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, whose gross incompetence is managing the economic economy has assumed legendary status. The president must spare Ghanaians the agony of waking up tomorrow to see Ken Ofori-Atta still in charge of the economy. And that's how it actually ended. A statement, thank you for your attention, was reading to the press. Let me come to Parliament rep here. You're welcome once again. So there was the debate that, well, the minority has given indication, NDC says it's not going to approve. Members of minority are reps on the vetting committee and they still represented, and they were thinking, why are you having double standards? Why show any interest at all in vetting the ministers to start with?
And good afternoon to my brother, and good afternoon to your cherished viewers. Most importantly, the good people of Tamale Central. I have told him that he seemed to be the only unlucky one who is not given the numerous, appointments under this government, despite the fact that he sacrifices his everything for the NPP. I do know that he's a grandson of J.B. Dankwa. Maybe perhaps he needs to swear an affidavit and add Ofori-Atta to his name. That may give him the opportunity to be appointed. And let me also state that this is not the first time that members of parliament or caucuses are directed by their political party to toe a particular line. It is imperative to note that members of parliament are in parliament to serve two distinct groups of people. One, your constituent, and two, the political party on whose ticket that you are in parliament. And that is why when we are filing our nomination to contest for the general elections, MPs or would-be MPs do not pay the money. The political parties pay the monies for and on their behalf. And that is why our constitution is also very clear that if a member of parliament defects from the political party on which ticket he is in parliament to another party, such a member of parliament forfeits his seat and the seat will be declared vacant. So there is every reason to conclude that the political parties have tremendous influence in the work of members of legislature of the political party on which ticket it is. In fact, at cabinet, the national secretaries of political parties attend cabinet meetings. That is our constitutional arrangement, and that is how we are. So it is not out of place that the NDC as a political party directed the minority caucus to take to a particular line. And I'll give you recent examples. When we won the elections in 2012, and the President Mahama was sworn in, when President Mahama wanted his appointees to be vetted, the NPP party directed the then minority caucus to boycott the appointment committee. So NPP never participated in the vetting of the nominees after the 2012 elections. Again, when we had the censor motion to remove the most disastrous Minister for Finance, the only Minister for Finance whose jobs was waiting for him, even when he was not in the country and when he wasn't well, that particular portfolio was waiting for him, strangely by a political party that claims to have the men. The only Minister for Finance who is there because he uses Ofori-Atta. Now, when that minister, we had the censor motion, the NPP directed, and the letter was signed by their General Secretary, directed the majority caucus not to participate in the processes leading to the possible, if you like, censor of the Minister for Finance. Again, when we were to elect the Speaker, remember, it took a first-time member of parliament, my good friend, Honorable OPK, to commandeer the entire MPP caucus to leave parliament, and that also happened. So it is not out of place. The disastrous aspect of it has to do with even the commandeering of the entire MPP caucus to leave parliament by someone who barely had an experience in parliament in the matter of the elections of the Speaker. Now, even before the NDC issued the statement, that was the position of most of us. And I can speak for
going to approve.
Yes, it never makes any sense. And it is important to also state that the position taken by the NDC on the matter of size of government, it is not exclusive to the NDC. That is the position taken by...
The position taken by the NDC is not a matter of size of government. It goes on to say it has directed you as minority,
so that's what I'm saying,
not to approve.
No,
so what I want you to address is when a minority released a statement, it focused on the excesses in the size of government in terms of some appointees, especially at the office of the president, the finance minister, without necessarily, dwelling so much on the new ministers that were going to be.
If you read the two statements, you would come to one conclusion, that the statement issued by the caucus in Parliament is giving more flesh to the statement issued by the NDC as a political party. As a matter of fact, the caucus statement is giving justification to why the NDC has taken the position not to approve, the presidential nominees. But the point I was going to make is that the position taken by the NDC, whether the NDC as a political party or the NDC as a caucus, on the matter of the size of government, it is not exclusive to the NDC. That is the position taken by every single political party in this country except the MPP. That is the position taken by every single civil society organization in this country. Imani has that position. CDD has that position. Every single civil society organization. As a matter of fact, I have monitored and have been monitoring your station. Every single aspect you have interviewed on issues of governance has a problem with the size of government. The academia has problem with the size of government. And in fact, the people from whom we are begging for money in this country, the IMF and the World Bank and all the Bretton Woods institutions, have problem with the size of government. So it is ridiculous if we have problem on principle, on the size of government, that you have a president who, regardless all the concerns expressed, that this president is still going ahead to appoint more ministers in his government. It is also important to state that there are leading members of the MPP, including members of parliament, who have spoken publicly about expressing their resentment about the size of government. So it is the position, if I can fairly say, taken by everybody, including you, the media, that the size of government is completely unacceptable. And that is why I just want to say that it is not a position exclusively taken by the NDC.
Right.
The argument that is being made, that how about two very critical ministries, Minister of Agric and Minister of Trade? Now, if we say that we are not going to participate in approving them, why are we participating in the vetting?
Yeah.
I think that's the question. We are participating in the vetting because it is an opportunity for us to showcase to the people of this country why we think that the need to appoint more ministers was absolutely misplaced. That's one. It is an opportunity to expose the rot under this government. And another very important reason we are participating in it, we have a mandate as a legislature to participate in the vetting. Participating in the vetting doesn't include automatic approval or supporting the decision that is taken.
But they did not participate in 2012.
I'll tell you the difference. Per the standing orders, and if you permit me, it's important for your viewing public to get this information. If you look at the standing orders, when a committee of parliament, particularly appointment committee, vets ministerial nominees, the committee is constituted by the speaker. When a single member disagrees with a decision of the committee, the report of that committee to plenary will be that the decision was taken to approve that nominee by majority decision, if a single member. Now, if nobody participated from the NDC and all the members constituting the committee are MPP, the approval will be that they were approved by consensus. Now, if a nominee's approval is by consensus, you can't come to plenary and demand voting. Now, if a nominee's approval is by majority decision, then the report will be submitted to plenary that ABCD minister was approved by majority decision. Now, once a nominee's approval is by majority decision, then we then have the legal ground to debate that at plenary and then vote. And the voting is going to be a secret ballot. So if you debate, what the speaker will do is that he'll take the voice vote. Now, if he takes the voice vote and he's convinced that the here is more than the nay, then the person's approval would. But even if the speaker rules and you disagree, then you then call for a count. And in that sense, voting would have to take place. And that voting will be by secret ballot. So if NDC says that because we don't want to support the approval of these ministers, we are not going to participate in the vetting. Now, all the reports which would have been submitted to Parliament will be that the ministerial nominees have been approved by consensus. In 2013, when the MPP boycotted the vetting committee, all of us, our approval was by consensus. So when they brought it to the floor, the speaker, after the debate, just announced those who are in support with the approval of ABCD nominee. Let me hear you say, then here, and nay. And at the end of the voice vote, now you cannot go ahead and demand head count. But when you participate and then vote against the decision, because the MPP has majority on the committee, when we participate and then vote against the appointment of those nominees, the report that will be submitted to Parliament will be that they were approved by majority decision. Then we then debate and vote. And we are very convinced that members from the MPP, we are speaking to some of them. If they would go by the promises and assurances and believe in the principle that majority of the people of this country believe in, we are very convinced that we would have these people rejected. One would ask, how about the approval of Hao Kumsin and co? It is possible for me, and I've said it publicly, wallahi, I never voted in supporting any of them. But some of us voted in approving some of them. The question is, can we experience that? Yes, it's possible. But I urge our colleagues that this thing we are going to do, we should look at our consciences, look at the struggle, the suffering the people of this country are going through at a time when pensioners who have sacrificed for this country are struggling. We don't need more ministers.
Is clear. Pargrave, I've spoken to you about this before in terms of reducing the size of government. I don't know, why do we have to go through all this? Because if you watch the minority statement, it lines up the transports and, the information and communication, transport and railway separate ministries. We have chieftaincy and tourism separate ministries. We have sanitation and local government separate ministries. We have also some bizarre portfolios, as they describe it, at the Office of the President, Youth Ambassador for Diaspora Affairs, Policy Associate, Chief Executive, Public Sector Reforms, Overseas of National Cathedral.
Overseer.
What is that, Overseer of National Cathedral? What's his work? Okay, that one is ridiculous, but go ahead.
Annie,
explain, yes.
a very good afternoon.
I'm sorry,
really,
let me welcome Elikem Kotoko has joined us. And also, I told you that the Member of Parliament for Mensha North will join us. He's joined us. Let me hear his voice. Akwesi, if you can hear me, Honorable Member, you're welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Annie.
Oh, great. Thank you. So let me have Pargrave respond. I'll get to you later. Right.
Annie, very, very heavy conversations this afternoon. Tells us the beauty of democracy. As I hear Honorable Mutala,
Comrade Mutala,
Thank you. Expand and expound all those issues. But let me use this platform really to extend condolences to Christian Achu's family, the wife, beautiful children, the twin sister, and the entire family. Government is in full support of all their funeral plans and arrangements, and the entire country mourns. The football fraternity also mourns with them, and we cherish his work that he has done for this country. And should Jesus come or Allah come, we'll see him again.
We should give him a state burial. I have argued on
Yes,
different platforms. He should be given a state burial
working in line
because
with
of the circumstances.
Government is working in line with that.
Yeah, we should. They should.
Government is working in line. I think it's a unilateral decision. Government is working in line with that. Annie, democracy is beautiful. What is happening in Parliament is a learning curve for every government. And I would want to congratulate the ministers designate that have gone through their vetting at the moment. We had a conversation here, you recall, when Elikem was here and I was here, about the nominations and questioning the wisdom of the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in putting certain ministers at certain ministries who it's assumed might not have the academic background in those areas. I'm particularly impressed with the conversations that have happened so far. The Honorable Brian Echampong expounded very clearly the importance of food security and conversations that all of us have been very concerned about, with growing our own foodstuffs and eating our own foodstuffs. We have stated that government has 22 more months to go into a major election. Clearly and critically, every single person that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has appointed now and is already even serving in government, the onus lies on all of us to cement the legacy and leave a legacy for these Ghanaian people for which they will look at to ask for us to continue our term of office and work after the 2024 general election. So we have had the cuts, the mergers of ministries, but ministries are important. I think we've had a conversation, agencies are important. And these ministers that have come in, I'm sure that they'll be able to deliver the mandate. The minority, it's beautiful how Parliament is structured and the arguments that have been raised on the vetting processes. I'm glad and excited that in the spirit of the letter that was written from the NDC political party, the minority leadership came to the appointment committee to be part of the entire vetting processes, which is a democratic responsibility and right for them. I'm concerned that they are taking this position, and I would entreat and really ask for them to reconsider to a higher level their decision not to approve the nominees of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. The government cannot come to a standstill. The country needs to run.
Let me interfere, or let me interject you, that these ministers, if not approved, the whole government machinery will come to a standstill?
Not at all. Trade ministry is important. Agricultural ministry is important. Chieftaincy and religious affairs is important. These ministries are key to have substantive ministers to live out the policies that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has set in place. And I would entreat the NDC and ask for them to reconsider their stance, because, democracy is dynamic and very fluid. We don't know what posterity looks like, but if posterity should look into the future, the NDC will need the MPP. And I want them to reconsider their stance on this issue.
Let me go on to the phones and speak with Akwesi Kwenedu, Honourable Member of Parliament for Menchia North. Akwesi, thank you for joining us again. Good afternoon to you. How is it looking like, from your side of the majority, hearing the minority take the decision or remind you that this is what we want to do, help government cut its size?
A very good afternoon once again, Annie, and a very good afternoon to my colleagues this afternoon. And Mutala would want me to say comrade. So Comrade Mutala, good afternoon, and good afternoon to the other two. Yes, I read the press release signed by the General Secretary of the NDC, and also listened through the press briefing by the minority side of Parliament as to their rejection and possible disapproval of the president's nominee for these various positions as they've been vetted in the last 2 days. And one way or the other, I just heard Honorable Mutala express this has not been the first time these expressions have been made, and it's not going to be the last time in his view, and that we did same during the 2012 after the President Mahama was elected, that we're not going to partake in the approval of the ministers of the president at that time. And it was based on one sole reason. That reason was that the legitimacy of the presidency of the former president was in contention, and that matter had been in court. And if you are contending legitimacy of that, you probably, and you see, that is the legitimacy, and that legitimacy, if it's legitimate, would give me the opportunity under Article 78 to appoint those ministers. And if you are challenging that, then obviously, morally, it will not be right for you to even be part either of the vetting or the approval of these individuals for ministerial positions. That is not the case now, first and foremost. Now, what they are saying is that the number of ministers, and they are using that as an opportunity to draw the attentions and carry along the sentiments of the ordinary Ghanaian and most other individuals as to the number of ministers that we do have as a country now. and the need for us to draw them down. If you read Article 78(2), it just says that the president shall appoint such number. I am not going to dwell as to what the number is now, then, or in the future would be. But Annie, let me also ask, of all of us agitating and talking about the numbers, have we been bold enough as a people to say that aside the Attorney General that has been named in the Constitution, that position, all the other positions we would want to have as a country, say 12 ministers? You find people comparing ourselves to, say, the Americans, the British, the Norways, and be talking about the Canadians, and be talking about them having 23 ministers, having 22 ministers, and the rest. But however, you probably cannot have the same architecture that they do have. They have so many different architectures and how it works. But that always gives us an opportunity to have, it says, such number. So currently, that is the number that the president, going under Article 78(2), believes that the mandate of Ghanaians as entrusted in him in the 2020 general elections would help him be able to take up that mandate and fulfill the promises that he's made. If on that score, we all do have the need for us to reduce numbers, I believe that we can probably now be suggesting and making it. Because if you know, we never had a Presidential Transition Act. But due to certain factors and certain things that have happened in the past, we all came in to have the Presidential Transition Act. Going under the same article and looking at the agitations that we have now and the concerns that are being raised, if you have not gotten there to be able to establish that we would want to have 23 ministers, 14 ministers, 10 ministers, probably, Annie, yes, the argument can be made. I don't take that away from any other individual. Can be made as to the numbers, but we probably also must give that discretion to the president. And I find it unfortunate because I sat through some of the vetting and I heard ask some of the ministers, nominees, that what do they think about the numbers of ministers? They're actually not appointing persons. So those questions that are thrown to them would obviously not suffice, because if you do that, you are just only trying to hang the person dry out there. Either is a yay or a nay. The person obviously will not get right with.
Right. I mean, so maybe you have a good argument in terms of the number of ministers that the president is limited to appoint. However, there are other areas in government that the minority also raised, and as Comrade said, it expatiated the position of the NDC by stating the appointment has been done at the presidency or the office of the president. Maybe if you consider those areas, then the ministers, these minority members, will not have an issue with you.
Annie, you see, I have always been a person that will not want to even go back a month and just be juxtaposing what happened a month ago to what is happening now. But at times, it's very important that we usually say in our account balance that in fact I'm a prisoner around to it. Because of comparison, that is why you don't find a prisoner always wallowing in sadness, because he probably finds his other colleague going for a life and he's going for 3 years. But Annie, you look at the office of the president and it's an embodiment of a whole magnitude of numbers of jobs that are being done there. Under the office of the president, you have the president's secretariat itself, you have the vice president's secretariat itself, you have the office of the chief of staff itself. So if you just look at the numbers and as to the designations of these individuals, and you probably driving that and just opposing that with the number of ministers, those individuals within there are not in the capacity to drive policy at the ministries. They do separate jobs from what the ministers are going to do at the ministries as compared to what they are doing at the presidency. Most of these.
Honorable, let me ask you this. Is the cathedral a special, will you describe the cathedral as a special project?
And it has always been described as a special project.
It's a special project. Okay. So you have the overseer of the National Cathedral and you have director of special projects. Why those two? And
the special project, as in terms of the cathedral, differs from what you are looking at the special projects. One of them, Annie, let's be very fair. If you have the director of special projects at the presidency, you are talking about direct productivity and developmental oriented projects that the person would have to supervise. And you have the cathedral. This is a national monument that we are trying to build for this country, set aside for posterity and the rest. These special projects are in line towards poverty alleviation. So if you have those two, and you probably cannot mix the two, if you have tangible and intangible assets, even accounting principles will tell you that you ought to account for them differently. So yes, and this is a temporary project that is being done up until completion. So if you have that and you are just opposing that with the director of special projects, the director of special project took upon itself all those projects that were previously under the Ministry of Special Development and Initiative, the development authorities, and the rest. This person is particularly looking at one specific project that we are building as a national monument for this country.
Okay, so and what's the difference between the focal person, La Francophonie, and technical director, La Francophonie?
You are looking at two things. I mean, the name even suggests, and I mean, you are trying to, if you are to discuss, if you want us to discuss the entirety of the numbers and individuals and the designations of these individuals, you probably should have told me. I don't have a problem discussing it. If you're having a focal person and a technical person, and you go to institutions where we have the managing director, you have the deputy director in charge of finance, you have the deputy director in charge of operations. One of them will directly, and maybe you have another deputy director. All of them do different jobs. One is the technical director, one is the focal person. If you talk about the focal person, he is the pinhead that revolves around, who coordinates the activities. He sees to how the management of all of these things will be done. If you are looking at the technical person, the person sits back, does the proposal, the project, the implementation strategy, and the rest. And you probably cannot be sinking everything into one. At times, you need to have diversity to be able to achieve perfection. So when you get to some of these things, and you would want to drill these things down, and it gives the impression that at times, and let me say it, when you would want us to drill it down and give these interpretations, at times it brings about a certain impression of us not caring. And I don't want us to get into that position. Let's talk about the substantive matters on the table.
Well, maybe it has gotten to a point where you have to admit that if any other person raised this and you wouldn't consider it as important, the minority in parliament has raised it in parliament and therefore has become an official document. And if I were you, it would be one of the first things I will pick and probably seek explanations or the technical definitions for these titles, because they have become an essential part of the discussion that we're having on the table.
First and foremost, your argument and your preposition sounds a bit off for me. The point I'm driving out is this. It is not about taking custody of that document and the designations and the understanding that we do not have. I only told you that if you want us to make that a discussion, you should. We are here discussing about the numbers of ministers that we have. And we are now just opposing the number of ministers to appointees and administrative class.
I don't know how you want to separate. You see, when I started, when I asked you the question, my first question was, maybe if you had considered that area in terms of agencies and technical offices under the presidency, then the minority probably would have reconsidered, because this is all still adding onto our cost. So you cannot really separate it and say, well, because we're talking about ministers, let's stick with ministers. It is all part of the release given to us by your colleagues on the other side, which, of course, I'm sure you have a copy of it.
I have. And then let me tell you, you see, that is why I first and foremost asked you that. What is the appropriate number? Let's all be candid here. And for you, give me an appropriate number that you think should become the number of ministers that this country can have. Then we probably can be sinking to that. When you give me that number of ministers, then we probably will go back. Then we probably can go back to the number of ministers now that we have and the number of administrative setup that they have. And you probably will tell me which of them we are going to collapse. And when you take a minute, what exactly is a monument around the minister who is a member of parliament? That is so much. That is why when you go to this extent, you probably would feel like we are not being caring and sensitive. What is the total monument around a minister who is also an MP? That is so much different and higher. That would call for all of these things vis-a-vis the number of individuals who are working in all of these agencies as public and civil servants. If you collapse one ministry, you probably only would merge those ones in tandem with the same number of administrative staffs that you do have going in. You probably will not let them all go. For instance, if you are to say, let's put together water and sanitation and works and housing, are you going to tell me that you are going to collapse the entirety of all the directorates under these two agencies?
Okay,
put them one.
Okay,
and let the rest
I
go?
don't have a lot of time.
Yes,
So
there is an argument going on about the numbers. There is no problem with that. But vis-a-vis how our constitution is being written has given the leverage to the president. If we would want to limit that, that is a discussion.
All right, let's pause it here. I probably will shortchange Elikem, but let me take a quick break. I'll be back with Elikem, and then we can wrap up.
Brings me to trust you as a minister of state, considering what happened at Labaoleshi.
But Atu, you are my friend.
It doesn't matter.
And today you don't trust me.
I'm asking a question.
Today you don't trust me.
No, I'm asking a question that can you convince me?
You should be testifying on my credibility.
No, it's not about credibility. I said convince me. We are here for the people of Ghana. Okay, so we have to ask the questions that are needed. And I'm asking the questions.
Hey, Atu. I have to. Please, your mic.
You're welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. We're still having debate behind the scenes, but Elikem Kotoko is a deputy national organizer for the NDC. Thank you for your time. I'll shortchange you, but still you have some time to say something. You heard the debate with Honorable Kwesi Akwesi. He asked me a question of how many I think is appropriate. My number is 46.
You are right, Annie. Good afternoon to Comrade Murtala and my brother Palgrave and our viewers. Annie, you see, if you recall, when President Nana took office, he said there was a huge task at hand and that he had to execute, for which reason he justified his appointments, including even the lady in waiting, which we still do not know what these people do, that we are paying for. If indeed he had work on his hand to do and he had done exactly so, I'm sure Ghanaians will not even have a problem with the numbers. Now, these numbers we are talking about is one of the major reasons we find ourselves in the quagmire we are today. Because expenditure on these appointees alone is enough to build so many schools and hospitals. As we speak, shamefully to say, we lost one of our citizens in the person of Christian Achu. Government could even send a rescue team out there. Even when he was being brought, he was just put on a normal commercial plane. But they were assembled at the airport to receive him and begin to speak flowery language. Meanwhile, if our president were to travel, he would have gone for a private jet immediately to travel, and you can imagine the cost.
He doesn't do that no more.
He doesn't do that anymore. Maybe he hasn't been traveling much.
The presidential jet is back.
and he's been traveling with it. Let's not defend this, because you know what? The problem is that the more we try to find velvet gloves to treat these matters, then the deeper we are sinking in the danger we find ourselves. Ghana is at the crossroads, where we've even passed the crossroads. You see, so when you are still making appointments, and you don't have recourse to what is going on in your country, I'm sorry but to say you are not only insensitive but very reckless and not wise. Because what is the essence of leadership? Is appreciating even your present situation and knowing how well to strategize ahead of tomorrow. But this is a regime that even if we are told that we need to borrow money tomorrow in order to pay salaries today, the president will still say, I have a travel to make next week. Please make arrangement for so and so for me. And he will not reduce the cost of his travels because he is a leader who enjoys luxury as part of even his leadership. Since when did the NDC not start complaining about the size of government and government expenditure? Right from day one. Right from day one. Today, and you see, when I was watching the Honorable Minister, the MP, I wanted to ask if you ever heard the word confident tricksters. When I was watching, that was all I was seeing. You know?
In his communication?
Yes, that was what I was saying. These are people who know very well that we are in dangerous times. Things are so bad. Yet they look us in the face and keep a very nice face. Either they are preaching or giving some admonitions, quoting the Bible, or consistently they are looking in your face and they think we are dumb. Which Ghanaian will be looking at the justification the member of parliament was given, for instance? We are not looking at only the numbers. The numbers alone wouldn't make anything. After all, Ken Oforiatta is not being paid. In fact, the danger to us for not even paying him is far worse than we paying him. We are better off as a country to call him to order that, look, we want to pay you monthly. Please take your salary, this and that. Maybe we are not paying him, for which reason he finds it justified enough.
I don't even understand why we're doing that. Any responsible company will not trust
Any
any
such
manager
person.
that says, don't pay me, I'll work for you for free. No.
Yes, whether it was done in the past or not, it doesn't justify it.
So because if you have resigned as an active worker of Data Bank and you are now a full-time worker as finance minister, how are you managing yourself?
That is why
how
he feels,
are you moving?
that
How
is
are you
why,
financing your daily? Maybe Palgrave can help. How are you financing all your daily activities
Ali,
without being paid?
that is why he feels that because he's not been taking salary, we have even no right to sack him. We have no right to even say he should go. He decides when he wants to leave because he's a Ghanaian and he's not taking salary. And you see the effrontery with which they govern this country. And it appears it's a craft where they have done it so much that we are even content, or we are containing them. And look, this is an implosion. I'm only sounding warning to Ghanaians, including myself. There may be a lot more of other Ghanaians who are worried out there, who are not happy. The decision they will take on the action they will take may be dangerous for our future.
Are you going to make sure the minority does not approve the minister?
I think that the minority is in tandem with the leadership of the party. And it is just justified so that looking at the times we are in, where we have leadership that fails to know where we are heading to or where we even are presently in order to take actions that would resonate, that will let the Ghanaian know that, oh, this is a leader who is sensitive, who is not reckless, who is responsible, who is wise. But talk of all those words, and it's only the negatives that you can associate them with. So we believe strongly that our minority caucus or our members of parliament equally understand the reasons why we feel this must be done. If the president, and you see, it is not surprising, when we had the now minority leader come out at the time to say there were going to be haircuts, the finance minister denied it. Even it took the president himself to address the nation and said there were not going to be haircuts. It tells you this is a leadership that could not see beyond its own nostril. A leadership that was lost, confused, and a threat to itself. You recall when finance minister and his deputies were in parliament, etc., saying that there was no way we were going to IMF today or going tomorrow. 2 weeks from then, we were in the IMF. So this is a government that is totally confused. And I get surprised that they even still honor invitation to come to your programs and come to peddle further falsehoods as though Ghanaians are dumb and do not understand what is going on.
Okay, so we're wrapping up on that one. Let me do...
Yes, quickly.
Try and do 1 minute each. Is Honorable Akwesi still online? Okay, so I'm doing a wrap-up, just one minute each, please.
I have listened to very slippery comments on economic issues. Unfortunately, I have never listened to the type I listened to this afternoon. I know my good friend, very sharp guy, and I can understand.
He's your friend?
Yes, he's my friend.
So why are you so surprised?
No, I'm surprised. In fact, I'm flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted that he has chatted this part. But you see, that's what politics can do to people. You know, when I read Cicero's writings, he described politics as a country idiot. Sometimes you listen to politicians and you cannot but agree entirely with Cicero. The reason why we are having this discussion today, Annie, and the reason why you've invited us here is not because of the numbers, but because of the reasons why we have problems with the numbers. I have listened to you, I have listened to everybody, and all those I have mentioned. I've said that the disagreement and the resentment the people of this country have with the appointees is not the appointees, but the cost on the state. You have a president, our debt to GDP is over 90%. Look, trust me, there's no way out.
Space.
There is no way out. You have a president who is taking money from senior citizens who have sacrificed everything to help build this country. And some of them cried like babies on national television. Very responsible citizens of this country. Some of them came to the ministry. The minister didn't have empathy or sympathy. His heart doesn't even move when people are struggling. At the time when people are struggling, that's the time they want to make more money. Yeah. That is the reason why we are raising these concerns. Look, take Ministry of Trade, Annie. The Ministry of Trade is divided into two areas, trade and industries. I have had the opportunity to have been appointed as a deputy minister at the Ministry of Trade before for 3 years. Now, you have 3 deputies and a minister. Now, you have the minister who resigned to contest elections. My expectation was that the president will upgrade one of them so that you have 2 deputies. Now, the 3 deputies who handles trade, who handles industries, when we're there, I used to handle trade, and my good friend and brother, Honorable Ricky Hagan, was handling industries. Now, what the president did is that he doubled down, that I want to have 3 deputy ministers. But you see, I saw danger. Honorable K.T. Hammond and my good friend, Honorable Sticker, I can tell you, these are very 2 complex individuals. They will fight. I can bet my last penny, and I want you to take note. Look, the only way people wouldn't hear about their fight is just the same way the controversy and the quarrel between my good friend Napo and the current minister for education when he was his deputy. That is the state. One last point I want to make, Annie. You see, last point I want to make, just 30 seconds. And why is it that they are refusing to play the ball? Instead, they are playing the man. Why is it that leading members of their party, including members of parliament, are against this? Civil society organizations are against this. NDC and others are against this. The reason why they want to reduce it to an NDC MPP ball is because when they reduce it that way, they get people who will patronize. Everybody show me one serious individual or group of persons or entity in this country who is not against what this government wants to do.
And it's been a very difficult conversation this afternoon.
I know. He's a government expert.
We would wish the appointment committee the best and wait for the results.
Interesting. Honorable Akwesi Kunedu.
Annie, thank you very much. I overheard you say your ideal number would be about 46.
46, yes.
And I'll just pick it up from yours. Rather, my brothers could not offer any number that we can work towards.
Well, I wasn't asked of any number.
I'll provide you an answer.
Prof. Mills had 75, President Mahama had 84, which included deputy regional ministers. If we take them out, it means that President Mahama would have had, what's the name?
About
74.
Yes.
He would have had 74.
It is relative. The number you talk about.
President Nanado in 2017 appointed 110.
Mutala, come, take your time. Just take
Thank
your
you
time
for addressing me as comrade.
Go ahead.
I know your party doesn't like that anyway.
That is the name that you used to be called. So why don't I call you that?
Nkrumah was sacked from UGC
rather than us
because of
talking
comrade.
about these numbers, the relativity of these numbers has been talked about over all of these years. To address this issue and address it permanently, that is why I asked that we as a people come together and suggest that this is the number of ministers we want to run our country with going forward. All of these arguments will be moot. Rather than come in with those sentimental arguments that my brother Elikem tried to do.
Right.
What does the whole idea as to the death of a Ghanaian icon like Achu got to do with this argument that we would want to have? At times, we should just be focused on what we are trying to do, rather than go to the extremes of all of it. You lose the argument, you lose the focus, and it becomes a free-for-all fight. And at times, we draw people into this that you may want to justify, that will render a whole situation worthless. Right. And I would urge you, once it's come to the table for some of these discussions, how do we move forward from where we are? That is one thing that I asked. He was not able. Annie, you are good to make that argument. Right. That let's do a 40. Right. Then we deliberate on that rather than bringing in these extremes.
Right.
But I'll say in my brother Agnes, we are waiting for the appointment committee.
Right.
Annie, let me say on record that
Thank you, Honorable.
President Mahama, or former President Mahama at Kempinski, did make it very clear that he was going to appoint not more than 65 ministers.
Yeah.
And this is very clear. And so, you see, the funny thing is that when the NPP are doing these things, then they ask you, what is your alternative? What is your... Are you even ready to listen to alternative in the first place? Because we've been telling you of the alternatives right from the very word go. And if you just look at the lectures President Mahama has even held, he has preferred solutions all this while. Have they listened to a single one? No. We are now here, and you have the effrontery to still be asking these questions. And that is why I get surprised at where they derive their energy from in doing these kind of things to the people.
Right. Well, let's draw the curtains here, and maybe, as they said, we really are left in the hands of the vetting committee or the appointments committee. Let's see exactly what's going to happen, after the vetting process is done. Comrade Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed is Member of Parliament for Tamale Central. Also, Akwesi Kunedu is Honorable Member of Parliament for Menchia North Constituency. Palgrave Boache Dankwa is Government Spokesperson on Governance and Security, and also Elikem Kotoko is Deputy National Organizer for the NDC, and he also joined us in the studio. I am Ania Fompofu. We'll give you updates from the vetting committee as the activities continue.